I'm going to be giving some authors a second chance. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be reviewing some books from authors that I'm giving a second chance to. Now the authors that I'm about to discuss are authors who wrote their debut novels or who wrote a novel that I read in the recent year or so and I actually didn't like and I actually severely hated, and it was like the style of book that I would absolutely not recommend it to anyone to read, even my worst enemy, and it was a book that I had to physically chuck against the room. So if you ever had those books where you actually felt such anger and such emotion towards it, these were the books that made me feel this way, and these were the books that I had to throw across the room. Now the authors that I will be talking about include some very popular authors here on booktube, and I just want to give you a disclaimer that basically these are my opinions and that I do not mean to harm you in a way with my comments, and that I'm not directing it towards you, or I'm not necessarily directing it to the author, but really I'm just discussing about how the book just didn't live up to my standard. So the authors that I will be talking about in this video include Sarah Hogle, Abby Jimenez, Sally Thorne, and also Gloria Chao. So let's get started. So for the first author that I'm going to be discussing, it's actually Gloria Chao. Now I read her debut novel with Simon Schuster Teen called American Panda back in the year of 2018, and I thought that I was going to really like it because back then there weren't that many Asian representation books yet pushed out through publishers, so this was a very rare one for me that I really wanted to read and actually really want to like. So now this book follows a teenage girl who is a freshman at MIT, and she is kind of getting her first taste of adult independence. She lives in the dorm room, but then her mom actually comes into the picture a lot of the times and tries to control her life, even though she's living on campus now and she has a mind of her own and things like that. One of the things that her mom keeps pressing her about is having a stable relationship and getting married to someone within the same culture as them, so that they have things to communicate and that they have like the same beliefs and values and things like that. And this really bothers our main character, mostly because she always felt like she was being closeted a lot and that she wasn't able to express her inner emotions and her expressions and things that were on her mind a lot of the times because of her controlling mother. For this book, I gave this one back in 2018 a 1 out of 5 stars, mostly because when I first started reading this book, I felt that it wasn't a true Asian American representation of an immigrant family. I forget if she was actually born in America and then like her parents immigrated there and then she was born there, or if she and her parents actually immigrated to America itself and then that's where she kind of started off her base. But I didn't like the representation because it was kind of very stereotypical. It felt like that they had this idea and notion that they were putting in the book that all Asian communities whatever they focus on is on relationships and marrying someone within the same culture, and then having that as being a sole goal for females in the Asian community. And I didn't like it at the time, mostly because I felt strongly against that. I didn't want people to read this book that are not in the Asian community to think that Asians do this and we care about this a lot. Of course, having a stable relationship and, you know, having a spouse is important in our culture, but it's not like something that's really pressing and really like something that our parents and our generation and our culture really press on, especially when you're still in university. It wasn't representative of my thoughts and my beliefs, so that's why I felt so strongly against it, and I absolutely didn't like it at that time. I thought the writing was a little bit depressing and it was a little choppy at times where it kind of I got pulled in and out of the book really easily, so I didn't appreciate it. So that's why I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I did read from Gloria Chao wasn't actually her second novel that she's ever published, which is called Our Wayward Fate. It was actually the novel that she did publish this year called Rent a Boyfriend, and the reason why I really wanted to read it was because the cover is gorgeous and it just looks so pretty, and I thought that like maybe she got better after she kind of got over her hiccup of, you know, publishing her first book. Maybe she developed her voice and she crafted her writing skills a bit better, so then like maybe I would really enjoy it. So Rent a Boyfriend follows the premise of kind of like a new adult book. It's not young adult, which is like something that I've started to slowly realize, that Gloria Chao actually writes new adult as opposed to young adult, but it's marketed as young adult. Our characters are actually already in college and they are of like age to do whatever they want to do. So I would say it's more new adult. Our female heroine is in university, but once again, a theme is reoccurring in Gloria's books where she always tries to focus on in Asian communities and how much we care about finding a spouse and finding someone that we get to spend our time with and that can provide for our future families and things like that, which is a little bit weird because I felt like that she was just kind of copying and pasting American Panda with Rent a Boyfriend. But regardless, the premise is that our female heroine does not have a boyfriend, does not want people to keep questioning her as to why she doesn't have a boyfriend, so she decides to rent a boyfriend. And I guess this is a very popular thing back in the Asian countries where you can actually rent a boyfriend and make them pretend that they are your significant other for family occasions or just for anything. Just if you're bored, you can rent a boyfriend. So I don't think that that's common here in America and Canada and in North America, but Gloria did say that she wanted to bring it over here just for the purpose of the plot in the beginning of the book. So I kind of got along with it. This book felt a lot more insta love, which I kind of appreciated because I felt like American Panda's like love interest and the love relationship was a little bit like wishy-washy and I wasn't really too sure what was going to happen. But with Rent a Boyfriend, we kind of quickly already fell in love with our main hero, who is Asian himself. He's an artist, but in order for him to make ends meet, he doesn't go to school. He actually becomes this person that he pretends to be so that he can earn money off of these girls who want to rent him. And they fall in love, and then this is kind of their love story where they're trying to lie and they're trying to keep their lie close-knit together so that nobody would know that he is actually not who he says he is, which is someone who is highly successful in a good university program, has a really strong family background, and who actually really respects elders and things like that. It's kind of all make-believe, and it's like they're kind of a forbidden relationship in a way, because once the parents figure out that she is dating someone that has no prospects, then this relationship is not gonna end too well for them. While the plot kind of seemed like it was like American Panda again, I felt like I kind of got a sense of where Gloria was coming from, and I kind of understood some like values and cultures she put into the book. I didn't hate this book as much as I hated American Panda. I actually found myself quite enjoying it a bit, and I actually ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. And the reason why I took off 2 stars was because towards the end, it felt very like our character didn't know what she wanted in life. Like she didn't know if she wanted to give up her dreams or if she wanted to go with the guy, but then also at the same time she did all of a sudden flipped her switch and actually wanted to be with the guy no matter what the parents said, and that didn't seem plausible because she was like thinking of abandoning her family. And then I was like, what is happening? And I didn't really agree with our character's emotions a lot of the times, and it felt like it was just a little bit cheesy at some areas too as well. So then that's why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than American Panda, and I didn't feel like I needed to throw the book across the room. So would I recommend you to check out Gloria Chao now? Yeah, sure, go ahead. If you want like a nice fluffy little story, definitely pick up Rent a Boyfriend. So the next author that I want to talk about is Jimenez, and everybody kind of already knows her. I feel like she is one of those authors that kind of blew up really easily and really quickly, and she kind of just shot to stardom. So she published a book with Grand Central Publishing, or Forever Romance, and it was kind of like one of Forever Romance's like most popular star titles. Like I swear, it has 50,000 reviews on Goodreads, and that's like unheard of or unseen of like some of the times when you go on Forever Romance's titles. So anyways, The Friend Zone is a book that a lot of people here on booktube have talked about, and I've actually seen some people actually talk about the impact of the friend zone to them in particular because of the ending. And so this book is about a girl who actually can't become pregnant because she suffers like infertility issues. And this is kind of her love story of finding someone who she really wants to spend the rest of her life with, but also knowing that he wants to start a family and she can't. So then that being like kind of like the major problem that keeps these two characters apart, which is like really sad and it's really devastating because it's like something she always wanted. She wanted to be a mother, but unfortunately her health doesn't allow her to be a mother, and she is growing to be accepting of it. And you're kind of like learning about our character infertility issues, and you're learning about her emotions, and you're understanding her a lot more. I felt like Abby did a great job at expressing our characters' emotions. You definitely feel sympathy towards the characters, and you feel sympathy towards her in general. And you're completely wrapped up into the romance because it's very sweet and it's very fluffy. I had no problem going through the book. I literally like was reading it so quickly because I felt like the writing was just so captivating and everything. But then literally the ending made me want to claw my eyes out and made me want to burn the book in the end and actually rip out like the last couple of chapters. So mostly because the ending was kind of unrealistic, and also became insensitive to readers who wanted to read about infertility and hoping that they can relate more to our main character. This book was actually marketed in a way that people who actually struggle with this issue would feel connected to these characters, and then the ending was just like a slap in the face with what actually happened and what went down. So I give this one a 1 out of 5 stars because I just hated the ending, did not care for it, and I just did not like specifically words that Abby used to describe why it was even possible in the first place. So the next book that I'm going to talk about from Abby is actually not her second novel in the series, called the Happy Ever After playlist, which I did read and which I did quite enjoy. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, I believe, but to be honest, it was a very low 4 out of 5 stars. It was more like 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the reason why I gave it that was because it was good and the ending didn't feel like it was insensitive. So that was a plus. But the book that I want to talk about for this video is actually her last book in the series, called Life's Too Short, which is about a main character who is a YouTuber, and she is very successful and she makes a lot of money by traveling around the world and making travel vlogs. But what happens is that she starts to realize that she may have early symptoms of ALS. So she knows that her life on Earth might be limited, and she's really deathly afraid of it. She's already kind of like cutting off ties with a lot of people. Her family is kind of falling apart, and they're not a functional family, they're a dysfunctional family. And her sister gave birth to a baby, but her sister is an addict. So then afterwards she takes care of the baby, but then her sister's kind of like in and out of the picture, and it causes a lot of issues. She lives next door to our main hero, who actually is a lawyer and actually falls in love with our main heroine. So it was like a friends to lovers romance. And I really, really liked it in the beginning when I was reading it because it was really fun, it was really flirty, and it was really cute. But then when we started to get to know more about our character, I started wondering, oh, here we go again. And like, you're maybe wondering, like, what do you mean, here we go again? Well, here we go again, where Abby, I feel like the author really likes to write about characters stuck in these really scary, sad, grief-stricken, and just depressing situations that have to do with their health. And that being like the main plot point to drive emotions for our two characters. Now, so the friend zone, our main heroine couldn't have a baby, and that really impacted her. And then that was the conflict. Then in the Happily Ever After playlist, that one, our heroine's husband actually passed away. So that was the plot point where she had to, like, you know, be human again and kind of get over the fact that her love of her life has passed away. And then our third book has our character kind of already plotting her own funeral and making sure that everything is arranged when she passes away, because she thinks that she's going to pass away in about a year or so from this like disease. And I felt like these books were just so like, come on, like, why are we always using like a health condition or an illness as like something to drive a plot forward? Like, could we not use something else to make it like sad and emotional? Like, why do we have to do this? And then knowing Abby and knowing that I read The Friend Zone, I already knew that, or I suspect that the ending would have been a happily ever after, and therefore kind of like a slap in the face. And I was struggling to finish this one because I really didn't want to be disappointed by the ending, because I didn't want it to feel like it was insensitive again and it felt like it was unrealistic. But when I did finish it, I did feel a lot better. It was really like wavering between a 2-star and a 4-star, and that's how I would rate Abby's books, because they start off really strong, but then towards the end you just feel so disgusted sometimes about how like the author is using these like illnesses and things like that to drive emotions that you just feel gross. So then that's why I went down to a 2-star at one point. But when I finished it, I actually gave it a 3 stars because I felt like the ending was a lot more realistic than The Friend Zone, and it wasn't as sad as it could have been. Will I read another Abby Jimenez book? Well, yeah, maybe, if her characters don't suffer from like an illness. At this point, it just feels like she's writing characters that suffer illnesses to drive emotions and to also use as a piece as like a marketing tool, so that she can say that, you know, this is representative of the population of readers, which is fine, which is great. But then if the ending is just insensitive, then like, what's the point? So the next author that I want to talk about is Sarah Hogle. Now, she debuted last year with her romantic comedy / enemies to lovers romance called You Deserve Each Other. Now, I really like the cover of this book and also like the synopsis of this book, because it was about a couple that has already formed, but then they actually still hate each other, and it's kind of like an enemies to lovers romance between our 2 characters. We have our main hero, who is deemed successful because he went to university, he has a good paying job, and he has a family that comes with money. And then our main heroine, who kind of has a dysfunctional family. She didn't go to college, but she still has a job and she makes her own money so that she can use it towards the things she likes. These 2 people are coming together to get married, but they are obviously having a lot of cold feet. Our main heroine specifically does not want to get married to him anymore, but instead of being an adult, she decides to kind of like make him break up with her so that she doesn't have to pay back his mom for like the deposits on the wedding reception and the food and things like that, because she knows that she has no money. She feels very inferior to her fiance, so that's why there's like a lot of pain and a lot of struggle. And then these 2 characters also don't communicate much at all. They also do a lot of childish pranks that kind of are insensitive, and it hurts each other's feelings a lot. And also the words that they say to each other are straight up just rude and can be very demeaning and can really impact you and scar you, especially when you're in a relationship with someone who is supposed to love you and who is supposed to be the one closest to you, and that's someone that you can be vulnerable with. So that's why I kind of really hated this book, and I was like really disappointed because I was just disgusted by our characters' behaviors and what our main heroine would say to our hero specifically, and how harsh her words were. Like, I felt really bad for him at some points because he was clearly like unable to express his emotions, but here she was cutting him down at the knees. So I hated this book, and I gave this one a really low 2.5 stars because like the ending kind of like did a little bit better of justice. Like, there was some closure. There's these 2 characters who kind of learned that, you know, they were in fact meant for each other, but they had to do a better job at just communicating in the future. I remember when I read this book, I was reading it at the same time as one of my friends that are not on booktube, but I was talking to her about it and we finished it at the same time, and we were just spamming each other for like a whole entire hour about how this book was so disappointing. And we kind of gave it the same rating at the end of the day because we both felt like that the ending was better than the beginning of the book, but still. So the next book that I did read from Sarah is actually her second book that she has ever written, called Twice Shy. This book actually just came out in April, I believe, and this one is like kind of like a southern novel that I found so charming and actually so fun when I was listening to the audiobook. So this one is about a character who is kind of living a life where it's not too impressive. She works a dead-end job, and her colleagues always abuse their power on her, and she always feels like she's silenced, and she doesn't feel like she can express herself properly at work. She escapes by writing AUs, which is alternate universe, and she like creates stories inside her head where she thinks about like love interests that want to sweep her off her feet, and where she is like, you know, a badass in different worlds and things like that. And it's really interesting to listen to an audiobook because it really feels like you don't know what's real and what's actually happening in the story, because, you know, in the book it would be italicized and you would know that she is thinking about it or she's writing about it, and it's actually not the plot of the story. So this one was really fun in that way. And then what happens is that she inherits a house that is from her late aunt, and when she goes there and she decides to quit her job and she decides to go to this house to make this house into kind of like a bed and breakfast kind of thing in an area, she realizes that there's already another person that is kind of asked to be another owner of the house, and now they both are fighting to get this ownership of this house. And this is kind of their love story. I thought that the pacing was very nice in the beginning. It was very sweet to see how our two characters were growing to know each other more, because our heroine is like kind of like a wallflower in a way that she doesn't speak up, but then when she's comfortable around you, she'll continue to speak and she'll continue to voice her opinions, which was really nice to see that she could express herself comfortably in front of our hero. And then our hero himself is kind of more on the shy, quiet side, but he is also going to stand his ground and take the house because he believes that he deserves it. This one overall, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I actually really like this one a lot better than the first one. I felt it was just like a nice breezy story to read on the weekend. This one was only 320 pages, so definitely it wasn't too big of a commitment. So I'll definitely check out more of Sarah's books in the future. So the last author is obviously a favorite of everyone's. It's Sally Thorne, and of course the book that I'm talking about is actually The Hating Game, and this one I actually read back in 2020, so it's just last year. I put it off for such a long time ever since it was published, mostly because I started it, I didn't like it, I didn't like the pacing, and then I was just like so scared of reading it afterwards because I just didn't like it so much that I finally forced myself to listen to the audiobook last year. Now this one is a classic enemies to lovers romance that everybody has talked about on here on booktube, and I hardly find many people who actually hate this book, but I definitely don't like this book as much as other people who have read it multiple times. Like, this one is about two people who work in a book publishing company, and they both are fighting for a coveted spot because the other person who doesn't get the promotion or who doesn't get the job is actually fired, and they both obviously want the job. They work for two separate bosses, and they are opposites attract. The bosses are complete opposites of each other and more fitting to each other's main personality, so they definitely clash in the workplace a lot. This one, I didn't like it because I felt like there was just too much hate in this enemies to lovers romance. For some reason, when I feel like that there is so much hate, it doesn't feel romantic anymore, and it's not teasing anymore, and it's more of like straight up like I hate you kind of vibes, which I didn't really like and I didn't appreciate. There's a lot of people that review this book on Goodreads that actually discuss how some of the things that were happening to our main characters and how our hero was kind of like treating our main character were kind of like signs of kind of like not like abuse, but like kind of like non-consensual things. So I never really read too deeply into it to think that it was like non-consensual, but also at the same time I just didn't think that the romance between them was as romantic as other people has depicted it to be. There were some scenes where I kind of oohed and awed, like, oh yeah, that's like cute, but there were also like many scenes where I was just like, this is not cute and I don't really care for it. So overall, this book wasn't like a book that I needed to burn. It was just a book that I felt like it was a little bit overhyped. So the book that I read from Sally to give her a second chance was actually her long-awaited second novel. After The Hating Game, she kind of took like a really long hiatus to write her second novel, mostly because I think she was in a writing slump or something, I don't know. But her book was 99% Mine. I haven't read her third book yet, which is called Second First Impression, but I read 99% Mine in 2019. But this one is similar to the storyline of Sarah Hogle's Twice Shy novel. So this one is about two characters who inherit a cottage, and then they're actually brothers and sisters, but then her brother wants to sell the cottage, do whatever, get as much money as possible. But our female heroine actually wants to keep the cottage because she really loves her grandmother and she wants to cherish bits and pieces of her and remember her childhood. And then the person who's responsible for flipping the house is actually her brother's best friend, and he's something of off limits because it's his brother's best friend and like they can't date because it's like gross and icky or something like that. And then this is kind of like the romance between these two people who are forbidden, even though they are like grown adults and they can make their own decisions. They kind of have this childish like idea that they can't date each other because they have the brother being there in the middle, which made no sense to me at all when I was reading this book. I felt that the writing was really dry and very slow compared to The Hating Game, which did take me like a long time to finish, so that's saying something. And this one, the romance didn't really hit the mark for me. Our main character is actually really different from all the main characters that you typically see in romance novels. I don't know. She's like kind of like a special snowflake, but she's not a special snowflake. She's more of like a badass chick, which I did appreciate because it added some spice in the romance novels that I was reading at the time. But unfortunately, the romance didn't hit it off for me, and I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. So with that being said, will I read her third novel called Second First Impressions? I'm actually curious and interested to read it because my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers actually read it and she absolutely adored it. And I know she didn't really like 99% Mine, so maybe possibly I will like the third book, but it's definitely at the bottom of my TBR and I'm probably not going to read it until like next month or anytime soon. Anyways, that is it for all the books and authors that I gave a second chance to. Hopefully you guys had some helpful insight as to why I chose to not like blacklist these authors, but just kind of put their books at the bottom of my TBRs and put them on the list of books that I may not want to grab first when I have some extra money to buy books. They're probably at the bottom of the list. But let me know any of the books or authors that you feel like are overhyped, that you actually don't really like, or authors that you strongly don't want to read anymore because they have disappointed you in the past, in the comments. And I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.